spawned in more mobs and caused me to get delayed even further.
Oh, come on.
Eventually, I got within striking distance of the hive, but I have to dig underneath it to get to the resin. And in doing so, I'm fighting things like that creeper, which when it explodes, immediately infects a massive area around that location. And every infection makes the horde that much more aggressive. So now we're dealing with more ravagers and the cows, which summon just tons of mites. I honestly feel really bad for the cows. They get the worst deal in this whole thing. But I fought through the night into the morning, burning everything that I could, and eventually getting to the point where I'm feeling like it's time to just commit, to do the best that I can. Because the horde was starting to infect the cobblestone that I was using to bridge in, and I don't know if that meant that it was going to be able to start spawning on my bridge instead of underneath it. So I went down, boxed myself in, got to the point where the resin could spawn, and got a whole one piece.
All of that work, 3 days worth of burying for one resin. One. What do I need to make a purifier? Essence of purity, I need those. How do you even make infested crying obsidian? I don't know. I need 4. Oh God.
But at this point, it was time to tactically advance to the rear, getting far away from spawn and back over towards my village because I need to upgrade basically everything I have if I want any chance of surviving here. I fought my way through a few caves looking for some easy diamonds, heading up and over the mountain, passing by where the grave mine had spawned.
Well, that's horrifying. Oh yeah, that's so much worse. Ooh. That might turn into a hive.
And once I found my way back to the closest nearby village, there was emeralds on the table, cake waiting for me, and a bed, which I slept in quite happily. The following morning, I realized all the villagers were trapped inside the fountain, so I spent some time just releasing them. It's a pool party, not the end of the world. Come on, get with the program. Where I found a bunch more villagers that had trapped themselves inside of a pen, and I don't want to set up a full villager breeding station and trading and all of that, so I just dropped a composter down, trying to see if I can trade in all of the wheat that I have for emeralds that I could then hopefully convert into things like arrows, while I'm also focusing on mining up gravel to be able to craft the arrows manually at the same time. Eventually, I did get an amazing trade with the fletching table, both sticks and arrows. That's going to come in so handy. And now I can fight the skulk at range, which is great because only 2 of those mobs can actually attack me back at range. This is the tactical advantage. I made my way back up to the attic of one of the nearby houses, and it's time for everyone's favorite joke. And I use that to make myself an enchanting table, because even diamond armor alone is not going to be enough to survive this. The following day, I'm still trying to roll for another villager who will have a wheat trade, eventually getting one about halfway through the day, honestly. I traded with them for almost everything that I could, grabbing every bookcase that I could find, stealing any bread I could get, and trading any logs that I could mine down into sticks for additional emeralds. I found the top of a house that had some bookcases in a pretty decent order already, using a bit of my remaining wood to make myself a full level 30 enchanting setup. The main thing I'm short on this point is lapis, and I'll have to go get that, but before I did, I got a ping from all of my mods, and we celebrated something together.
Please.
Oh, come on. Yes! Let's go!
Watch it go down. Thank you all so much again for 500,000 subscribers. By the way, there's only 1 week left on the 500K merch on top of the Skulk merch from this drop. So make sure you go get that before it's gone forever. But getting back on topic, getting back into things, I headed to the massive flooded caves that's directly next to the village, using some magma blocks to allow me to be able to breathe, mining up some lapis around here so that I could start doing the enchanting, heading down and digging through the aquifer into the caves proper, working my way down additionally into the deep slate level where I'm grabbing mainly more lapis, because that's all I seem to be finding right now, getting down to a point where there's a ton of iron, a ton of gold, but not the diamonds that I'm really looking for. Striking out on that, I continued working my way through the caves, mainly elevating a little bit and mining through the stone level just for speed, heading over to another massive deep slate cave. Here I did a little bit of Enderman battling just to get myself some pearls, fighting off a few creepers and finding a decent bit of diamond. Enough where I'd be able to get a full set of armor, but as I got close to one of the walls, I heard a very disturbing squelching sound.
Oh, that's not good. Oh, we're nowhere close. Oh no, that's so bad.
The skulk was already starting to grow directly underneath the village that I was currently calling home. It was only a matter of time before it would break the surface and attack me in earnest. And once the grave mine gets to a certain point, it's actively hunting for me and for priority targets. You know what a priority target would be? This village. If it can kill everything here, that's a massive boost to its mass. So I need to be very careful, and I need to start working on a cure ASAP. But I headed back to the village, getting protection enchants on my armor, so I'm going to need it very, very soon. I'm smelting up all of the gold that I possibly can, crafting up some golden apples, and then combining that with amethyst to get the essence of purity. With that, I can start actually fighting back against the horde. But I'm going to need some sand for that because I'm going to need to craft some of that into bottles. And I did a little bit of smelting throughout the night in one of the furnaces here in the village, getting myself a whole 8 essence of purity and then starting on that process again. I'm going to need a lot of these, and half a stack is barely going to cut it. Day 22. Now armed with a bit of a cure, I can think of one way which I can slow down the horde so that it won't immediately be attacking me. It's risky, it's very dangerous, but it is potentially the only way to fight back against this infection. I headed over towards where the grave mine was, retracing my steps down through these massive caves, climbing down the water and getting to the ancient city. From there, I threw my first purification flask and watched as it slowly chewed away the skulk, converting it back into dirt and turning everything from the sensors to the shriekers into grass. This is how you can fight back against the horde. Pushing back against the horde, I started slowly making my way through the ancient city, disinfecting areas as I started to push in and tracing my way towards that heartbeat that I could hear in the distance. That white sphere that was growing in the ceiling of this space, that's the grave mind brain, or at least a sub-mind of it. And that's what's actively hunting me right now. So I need to just slowly make my way towards it. And thankfully, at this point, it's still all vanilla skulk. It's gonna get bad as we get closer. Thankfully, I found a few things that would help. I'm still looting while I'm at it because it turns out I had missed a few things.
Oh, that's huge. Huge, huge.
But I have to take this very carefully, especially as I get closer to the Skulk Mind. It's less the vanilla ancient city generation and more what you find in the mod, which means it's summoning mobs now and aggressively hunting me. And fighting them sets off sensors, which sets off more summoners, which sets off more mobs. You have to just worry about things cascading out of control very quickly. Thankfully, the purification flasks are doing a good job at pushing things back, and I'm able to kite around the Ravagers, shooting them the half a dozen or so times it takes to kill right now. I eventually ran out of blocks, so I needed to mine up the dirt that had been converted from Skulk, which had been converted from Deep Slate, which was a result of the infection. This is a weird block path, eventually getting my way over towards the brain. Now, I'll admit, you see in the corner, I should have the darkness effect right now. Something with my shaders and darkness didn't really play nicely. So this is a little less dangerous than you would have if you were fighting it in vanilla. But I'm going to take any advantage I can get, considering everything in the world is eventually going to become part of a hive mind and try to eat me. So I very slowly mined my way in towards the brain, and then was faced with a problem. This thing will regenerate. If you break the blocks, they'll just grow back. Without efficiency, it is super slow to mine at this thing, and purifying it didn't seem to do anything, at least not directly, so I really only had one choice. After the first blast did basically nothing, I reloaded again with some more, and it's growing back almost as fast as I can place the TNT. But eventually the node was exposed.
This is gonna take a minute.
And a minute it did. At that point, I was worried that it was going to be able to fully regrow before I could break the block. So I committed.
Yes!
Yes! So the brain was gone. That doesn't mean the whole thing was cured. Far from it. The skulk would continue to grow, just in a slightly less mature state. The thing I had to worry about now was the warden that I just spawned.
I defeated a skulk node. Oh my god.
Knowing that I had a bit of breathing time, I'd bought myself at least a few days. I spent some time mining up as much of the skulk as I could, grabbing whatever diamonds that I could find, and then slowly making my way back up and towards the surface. I torched the entrance so I could get back down to the ancient city without having to go to the mountain itself, slept in the village, and then now with a bit more time, spent some time mining up any skulk that I had collected and brought with me just to get my level up a little bit higher, and then focused on enchanting. First priority here was tools. Considering how slow it was to mine my way into those skulk brains, I'm gonna need something, and I can't be picky here either. I'm short on diamonds, so I'm enchanting my iron armor just so I have something. Feather falling is gonna be extremely important, and even just unbreaking on iron armor is worth it in this situation. It's the end of the world. You can't be picky. But I did see a Fortune 3 book, which is definitely something I want, so it's time to focus on earning experience, mainly through villager trading, which was able to get me up a few quick levels, and then I thought, let's head over to the next village nearby and see what they have. I ran and grabbed all of the wheat from there, which I could then turn in for more trades, sleeping and continuing to pillage my way through. I thought, considering I can't get to the nether or the end, I'm gonna need a faster method of transportation. So I started working on taming a horse, and my friend here was actually pretty decently fast. Not having to worry about jumping up the very mountainous terrain separating these villages, I was able to get back home pretty quickly, doing a whole bunch of trades to get myself up to level 17, and then fighting off a few mobs, mainly for food, not so much for the experience. Once it started raining, I returned back to the village, did a little bit of mob breeding as well, and saw some villagers in precarious positions.
I have so many questions. That's a mood.
But taking full advantage of the breather I had bought myself, I was harvesting all of the farms that were here in the village, as well as finding a bunch of meat in a smoker cabinet that all I needed to do was light it up and get a whole bunch more meals ready to go. The next morning, I crafted myself up a diamond shovel so I'd be able to mine sand a little bit faster, get that smelting, and convert that into more bottles, which is more purification flasks. From there, though, I'm thinking about what I'm going to need to take on the horde again. If another node spawns, I'm going to need a lot more TNT. If I'm going to head towards the central spawn, the ancient node, I'm probably going to need a whole lot more. So I spent the evening fighting mobs, and turns out Skulk is not the only thing trying to kill me in this world, and is also not the only thing trying to jump scare me.
Maybe we just shoot them with the bow.
But I fought my way through the night, taking on some endermen for pearls, any creepers that I could find for additional gunpowder, and repeatedly being jump scared by the raccoons.
That's not ominous at all.
The following morning, I crafted myself up some TNT, and this mod pack has a slightly modified TNT recipe because, well, I'll be honest, once you get to a certain point, only skulk mobs are spawning, so the little bit less as far as gunpowder requirements is good, and requiring things like sugarcane when Skulk hunts plants is definitely a bonus as well. I also realized that I had collected the resources to turn that horn that I had found on the pillager tower into a skulk horn, which would allow me to shoot out a giant skulk blast, which is fun.
Hello, cow.
Goodbye, cow. But I jumped on my horse heading back towards the nether portal that I had visited some 15 odd days ago, because there are 2 pieces of crying obsidian. Now I know I need infected crying obsidian. I'm pretty sure I know how to get that, but I'm not 100% certain, but just having it on me would definitely come in handy. As I was riding home, I did end up falling in a hole, which was kind of unfortunate. Took a little bit of time to dig my way out there, making my way back to the village, and then the following morning, we're getting at it to try to see what we can do next. The skulk was now spreading down the mountain, meaning I'm fighting it as I'm down at the tree level, and there's a ton of summoners around. And the skulk is still very much active and aggressive, even though there's no node underneath the mountain right now. All I've done is slow it down. Defeating the nodes is not how you kill it. You need to purify the whole world if you want a chance. But there is a new hive here, and getting some resin from underneath that is probably easier than getting it from all the way back at spawn. So I worked on bridging my way in, using shears to get resin from all of the different kind of, I don't know what to call this, hive growth blocks underneath, and using the occasional purification flask to push back the infection a bit. I also threw down the crying obsidian right at the edge of the infection radius, thinking that's probably how it gets infected. At least that makes sense to me. And with that set off to cook, I figured I'd loop my way back around to spawn to see how far it had progressed here. Unfortunately, I did end up getting stuck in powdered snow and almost killing my horse. And doubly unfortunately, it was starting to cross the river, meaning that there was summoners all the way down to the coast. There was a ton of mobs spawning, and I'm losing a good portion of arrows just trying to hold everything back. I'm using the purification flasks a little bit here and there just to try to see how much damage they do to mobs. Spoiler alert, basically nothing. You need to kill them in the old-fashioned stabby mode. But everything that I can learn is a little bit of information which will make me better at fighting the horde. The following day, I was on my way back over. I checked the crying obsidian. None of that had been infected as of yet, but it's possible the skulk just isn't growing in that direction or isn't growing as aggressively. I did make my way back up towards the hive, which had fully regened all the resin, so I was able to get 4 more of those. Heading over to meet up with my villagers, where I was able to convert a lot of emeralds into a lot more ammunition. And then we had a problem. Just over the hill from my village, a little scout was making their way over. There was a bee right here, a skulk bee this close. I mean, I killed it because, of course, I can't have it spreading spores, but every place you kill a skulk mob is learned by the grave mines, and they're going to come hunting. The next morning, I headed back over the hill on foot back towards the grave mine site, because if bees are starting to venture out from here, I need to push that back to try to delay it finding the village and knowing it's a prime raid target. There were spore spewers around which I needed to shoot. I'm throwing down purification flasks to just push back on the infection, and I figured we're checking it at the surface, we need to check it underground as well. I headed down into the cave system, just seeing what was around, seeing where the skulk was kind of growing in the general westerly direction to where my base was. I'm using flasks to try to mine that all down, eventually finding exactly what was the problem. The infection had moved underground, mainly through mine shafts and other small caves down here, to the point where it had split the difference, already made it halfway to where I was based up.
Oh, this is super close to the village.
I just throwing purification flasks pretty indiscriminately, and there's the hive that bee probably came from. The question I have is how it made it to the surface. I'm not sure about that, but at least I now know kind of how far it had reached. We had to do something about it. The main thing I could do is break the hives. That is priority number 1, and I'm using a ton of flasks. I started with 32, I'm down to 10, and I've just been throwing them pretty willy-nilly, honestly. As it rolled over to day 32, I'm fighting underground and setting off a few summoners, which is giving me some mobs to deal with, and I need to be careful here. But it's very close quarters, so the super dangerous mobs, the Ravagers, are normally getting caught inside the mine shafts and not able to come munch on my face directly. While I was down here, I did some looting. There's still vanilla creepers to deal with. There's the mine shaft where you can get a whole bunch of things in the chests and a ton of gold, which is great because I have a feeling I'm going to need a lot more purification flasks very soon. But in exploring around this cave system, seeing the full extent to which the skulk had grown and how far it was probing out into the rest of the overworld, I got an idea of just how bad this was going to get. I actually ended up underneath the mountain directly adjacent to my village. Thankfully, I had the purity buff, so I didn't have any spores on me. I don't think I could be tracked. Unfortunately, the bees were even closer this time. No longer on the top of the mountain, now down in basically one of my villagers' backyard. It seems now the question was when, not if, this village would be compromised. But I'm gonna do my best to make sure that takes as long as possible, making a whole new set of flasks the following day, just looking around to try to see where it was growing up to the surface. If those bees were spawning up here, that meant that there was a hive a lot higher up than down in the deep slate. And I investigated in some of the caves around here, finding another bee and a section where the skulk was actually pretty close up to the surface. I spent some time, basically the whole day, just cleaning this cave. Between throwing flasks and manually breaking all of the skulk vines, I was able to trace my way down and through to see how that connected to the mine shaft that I had been in just the previous day. When I went up to check the surface a little bit more at the end of the day, there were more bees, so this is only going to get worse. And realizing just how close these actually are, the following day I was visited by another wandering trader, and this one was not as lucky to survive the end of the world. I wonder what happened to them. But in going and checking on my crying obsidian, it had still not been infected. It seems like the Skull Horde was focusing on prioritizing underground growth right now to be able to pull some sort of sneak attack instead of moving overtly over the grass. So I moved the crying obsidian a little bit deeper in, and I also thought about throwing a few flasks to push the infection back to see if it would try to regrow and gain the same space. But while that was working, I'm thinking it's gonna be bad soon. Let's get whatever else we can out of this village. I'm breeding all of the mobs that I can, finding another closet full of meat that I was able to cook up, and seeing a zombie piglin up on the surface. And considering we had no nether portals in this world, that pig got struck by lightning. Imagine the odds of that. Does that count as streamer luck? I think that counts as streamer luck. The next day, I converted everything I had into more TNT. It was probably not enough to kill another node, but one is inevitably going to spawn, and I wanted to be prepared for when it did. I headed back over the mountain to check on my crying obsidian. It had not yet expanded into that, and I figured let's go back down into the caves and try to hold the infection back from my village as long as humanly possible. Taking advantage of the high ground, shooting down to any mobs that I potentially would encounter, and using flasks wherever possible to push back the infection. I'm just trying to hold it back to do what I can, but the regular creepers wanted my death too. In my panic for running from that creeper, I set off another summoner, which summoned a ravager, which was trying to chase me, and I ran down one of the caves, blocking myself up in a 1x2 hole with only 2 hearts underground in the middle of the horde. This is the worst I had been by far. Taking my time to collect myself, avoid any potential confrontation, I just slowly mined my way back up to the surface, avoiding anything else in my way. In the process, as it rolled over to day 36, I broke my pickaxe without paying attention. I was just so focused on trying to escape, so I had to craft myself up a new one, wasting essential diamonds, but securing my safety, at least for now. I made my way back up to the surface, looking to see what my new pickaxe would roll at, and Fortune 3 was an option. But I didn't have the time to get myself up to level 30, so I settled for Efficiency, Fortune, and Unbreaking. A lesser version, but at least it's something. After a bit more trading with my villager friends, also taking the time to invest some money into food. I never buy food, and I always run out of food in these 100 days. I made some more golden apples, made some more purification shards, took a quick nap, both in real life and in the game, and as soon as I logged in the next day, I think some sort of cooldown had ended, because things were about to accelerate. Oh no. Okay, I knew that was coming, but I didn't know it was gonna happen right away. Now here's the worst problem. I don't know where that is. It could be at spawn, it could be here, it could be right underneath me, and I have no idea. Uh-oh. Okay. Oh, we have work to do. The advantage I had with the first node is I knew exactly where it had spawned. This time I was nowhere near as lucky, so it was going to be a guessing game on where I needed to go. This is also about when my PC exploded and I had to build a brand new one. So I did spend some time geeking out on just how far I could push the settings to be able to get better recordings for you all. And I was very excited to be able to basically double my render distance. But I headed over towards the hive because I'm going to want more resin to be able to get myself more purification flasks and the auto purifying machines. But we're summoning quite a few mobs in the process, and I'm just trying to take out as many as I can, grabbing the resin and then running down the mountain, heading back over the hill and back towards home. Do I not even have a bed in my inventory right now? I don't. Not being able to sleep in the field, I made my way back to the village, had a quick nap, and then the following morning was focusing once again on clearing the caves underneath the mountain to try to hold the horde back from attacking the village as much as I could. The problem was, as I was heading to where I knew the skulk was, I started hearing more crawling through the walls. Oh no, I don't like that sound. Oh no. So the skulk was a lot higher up now, which was a bit of a problem. I cleared a few of the mobs around here, just throwing down some torches to secure a beachhead from more vanilla threats before starting to mine around, trying to see if I could get my way towards whatever skulk was there and if I could do so from the high ground. At one point, the blocks I was mining started infecting underneath my feet, and I think I found where I wanted to go. Working my way down, as soon as I turned a corner, I saw a whole horde of spore spewers. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Now, I initially had panicked, just ran, and I'm like, wait, no, I need to go and kill those as soon as possible. So I headed back down, sniping at them from as far away as I could. There's like 3 or 4 right here. I don't know how they spawned so aggressively, but it's very clear that the horde was trying to track to my location and get towards me. This is probably how they had made it this far west.
Oh, this is bad. This is very bad.
I did everything I could to just cure and purify that cave, but it made me think that it would just find another emergence point to the surface, potentially even closer to my village very soon. The following morning, we're continuing to just try to hold the line. Then I got a very concerning message which popped up.
A skulk-infested Enderman is scouting out a possible raid location. Keep an eye out. Oh no. Oh no. Okay. Don't panic. I'm panicking. Because that means, oh, if it finds the village is toast. If it finds me, I'm toast. I don't know what to do. It got so much smarter so quickly. Oh, it's gotten so bad. Okay, let's do what we were gonna do.
And now that you saw me in all 5 stages of grief, about 1 minute later, this happened.
Oh my god. Why would you make that loud? Why?
But my crying obsidian still hadn't been infected. So I grabbed a piece of it and thought, let's head over somewhere that I know should be growing pretty aggressively. So I headed over to spawn, trying to work my way in and get a little bit of a route of attack here, given that the terrain is pretty aggressive, especially trying to do so on horseback, fighting off a lot of the mobs across the river, utilizing the fact that they're pretty slow in water as my only saving grace here. I slept on the side of the river, went and collected my horse, parking them in a little 2x1 hole, before heading over and throwing a purification flask to push the infection back, and then another, and then another. This also caused mobs to spawn, so I was fighting skeletons and ravagers the entire time, but I got to a point where I'm basically pushing in towards where the skulk is already sure to be underground, just out of range of these tiny little bottles bridging from tree to tree. I thought, here's my shot. Once a whole chunk of land had been cleared, and I saw it was at the point where the skulk infection was trying to retake the space, this is where I thought I could get the obsidian infected relatively easily. I jumped down to the surface, dropped the block off, and booked it because This is brave, but I'm not stupid. I know I'm gonna get eaten if I just stand there waiting. The next morning, I actually spread out the crying obsidian a little bit to try to just double down in case the skulk was growing in one area or another, fighting off all of the mobs until eventually I saw that deep purple turn to a corrupted cyan. And once I was able to get in there and get it, we had what we needed. Leaving the second of the blocks there to get converted at some point in time in the future, I had jumped on my horse and started to leave. I'd made a dent in the skulk, but you really couldn't tell if you didn't know exactly how far it had spread previously. And in working my way back towards the village, I was feeling at least moderately good. I crafted the crying obsidian into the crying souls, which is step 1 of the purification process, and I'll have to combine that with the calcite clumps, which means I'm going to have to get very close to where Gravemind is in order to find some of that. Because we're not talking the calcite that you get on the outside of a geode. No, this is more skulky, probably more squishy. That cat wasn't the only one either, because I'm going to have to head back down into where I know the Gravemind is, where the skulk is probably at its strongest, and try to find the calcite clumps that were growing from here from Skulk Living Rock. These spires grow anywhere near a Gravemind, so if I can find them, I can find what I need. I'm grabbing all of the golden diamonds that I see while I'm around here, all of the amethyst as well, because that is another essential ingredient. Grabbing some of the different skulk materials and other things that I can find here, because for once, this place isn't inherently directly murderous, and I had a little bit of time to search around. But I kept hoping at one point in time I would hear the heartbeat just from around the corner, off in the distance, give me a clue where the Gravemind had respawned, but I didn't. Which honestly is worse, because I have no idea where that node could possibly be. Look at the entire world. I have no idea where that node could be. Could be down here more. Could be somewhere completely new, which is terrifying. Speaking of terrifying, I hate it, but maybe because it was late at night IRL, I didn't see any living rock down in that area. So instead I just followed my path that I had been through before, getting back up onto the surface and returning back to the village. I was able to combine 2 of the different diamond pants that I had collected to get myself protection on my pants finally, getting a helmet enchanted, and setting up a smithing table to mainly go for fashion game. We're using that amethyst to put the silence armor trim on everything. There we go. That looks good. I smelted up all of the gold into more golden apples, crafted more pure shards, took a quick nap, and headed back over towards the mountain. I'd returned via underground, so I'd forgotten that I left my horse over here. Where did I park my horse? Oh, I keep forgetting it's right here. Oh, that's why I went there in the first place. I needed I forgot. As soon as I got the cool loot, I forgot. I need the calcite clump. Calcite. Calcite? Is it just calcite? It's calcite, but a different kind of calcite, apparently. I completely forgot why I went to that section. I'm an idiot. So now that I remembered what I was actually there for, because I got distracted by loot, I rode back over towards my parking spot, dropped the horse back off, marked it on the map this time so I'll remember, headed back down into the cave system, finding a very decked out skeleton who didn't drop any of that gear, rude, and some calcite, but it was the amethyst kind and not the skulky kind, but I was able to get a whole bunch of amethyst shards. Heading back down and sneaking around, I saw, and this might be a little hard to see on the video, this slightly blue cobblestone looking spire drilling down from the ceiling, and that's the living rock that we need to go and mine. I worked my way mining through all of it, just trying to find the calcite ores, and I do have fortune, which is going to come in handy, and I eventually found one, getting a single piece of calcite. We're gonna need a lot more than that, but thankfully there was a decent bit of ore in here, and I was able to get more than enough for several purifiers. After that, we made our way back out of the ancient city, avoiding setting off far too many sensors. I summoned a warden, but really, what's a warden compared to the horde at this point? Making my way back out through the river entrance and seeing yet another skulk bee, this time directly in the city itself. But as I exited the river and saw a skulk be off in the distance, I thought that would be my biggest problem. But instead, this was.
Is that another one? Where's the bee? Where's the bee? Where's the bee? Okay. That's another one. There's 2 nodes active now, and I have no idea where. Oh, this is bad. No. Holy crap, we gotta run. What is that? What is that? What was that? That had a boss bar. Oh, and I think it is in the village. A Skulk Enderman is infesting a raid target. Oh no, are they attacking the village? Yep. That's bad. Oh no. Oh no. That's right next to the village. That's where the node must have spawned.
I sneaked my way around and over the snow-capped mountains to the south of the village, just trying to get eyes on the Enderman, seeing it and being terrified.
It hit me so bad I turned shaders off. Oh, okay. That cost me all of my god apples. Oh no.
Fighting that thing cost me 3 god apples and almost all of my other resources and my village and home. The horde had gotten a whole lot smarter and things were about to get a whole lot more dangerous. The following day, I'm just walking around trying to take stock of what happened and how bad it's going to be, if a raid is even going to be spawned at my location. The cows and the mites are doing everything they can to attack me, and the spewers on the top and hives up there, that's going to make removing the skulk near impossible. I worked my way around the infection, fighting off everything that I could, sniping it back, and realizing that it was growing in the direction that I was standing in, and there was quite a few mobs very ready and willing to come and attack me. I fought them off throughout the entire day, then remembered that I had a marker on my map. With that, I just got on my horse and ran. I went around the far edge of the skulk, getting back towards the village, where the house that I was in now had a bit of a mold problem on the front door, sleeping there and preparing to completely abandon this place, but not before I gave it a good, honest try. I crafted up a purified soul, then crafting that into 2 infection purifiers. Now, these are the main way of fighting back the infection. When you put them down, they turn into an entity that will continuously push back. The problem is, the horde's aggressive and tries to kill it, so you have to actively defend it on the ground. I got my horse stored off to a safe location using purification flasks to push a beachhead into the skulk horde on the top of the hill, fighting all of the spore spewers and doing everything I could to dodge creepers as they were actively fighting me trying to turn this back into dirt. From there, I made myself a little tower out of living rock and then spawned the purifier on top, hoping that that would be enough to protect it.
It's working. It seems like it's working. I mean, it's definitely working. I don't think it's actually making a difference.
The problem is, while the purifier is burning away mass, the skulk horde had accumulated a lot of it, and with 2 grave mines, it was even smarter. I left the purifier up there on the top of the mountain, ran down the hill, which was now covered in the blue cyan mess, and there's spore spewers all the way down in the village proper at this point. I am pretty sure this village is done for. So it was time to head out. I grabbed the enchanting table, anything else from the chests that I thought would be useful, and tried to fight back a little bit, just tried to see what difference I could make before remembering I had left both the horse and the purifier up on top of the mountain. Oh no. I ran up to grab the purifier, saving that, as having 2 of those is one of the only ways I even have a remote chance of protecting myself against this horde, because with this much mass and open space, it's about to start growing exponentially. But I jumped on the horse and ran. We both actually got infected by spores, but I didn't have any more purification flasks. So I had to smelt up sand on the fly, just standing over here in the field, giving it all sorts of hints as to where my location is. Eventually making myself the flasks, taking a quick nap, and figuring I shouldn't even bother considering I'm going to engage it a bit further. I dropped my horse back off, went up and grabbed all of the bookcases from in my house so that I could move the full enchanting setup, and then fought the skulk horde from the roof of the village here. And summoners were all the way down the mountain, spore spewers were all the way up on top. I figured maybe if I go down, around, and under, I can get some idea of where the node is. Give me some idea of a path of attack, and I could slow this down, cut it off right here. I headed down through the caves underneath the village, making my way back to the same mine shaft I had been in previously, and while you could hear the skulk growing much more aggressively than before, there was no heartbeat, nothing to be found. That was until I dove deep down into the mine shaft off in the easterly direction and heard the telltale heart of the skulk beating. I marked the potential grave mine location on my map and then just focused on extricating myself from the situation. I was very low on supplies, had next to no arrows, no flasks, only 1 torch to my name. This was not how you take on the entirety of a hive mind who wants to consume the world. Believe me, I've tried. I worked on mining my way back up, hitting the aquifers underneath the village and swimming up from there to the river, which previously bisected it from the skulk horde, but now was not looking so hot. I went around the village, cooking and killing anything that was left alive, because I'd rather be food in my belly than food for the horde, and then rode my way over towards the grave mine site. My first thought here is this part of Skulk is somewhat dormant, considering its Skulk node is dead, and the village is the new place where growth is happening. So I grabbed the crying obsidian that I had left here, and instead turned around, placing it on the edges of the Skulk growth that had overtaken the hill by the village. With that, I threw down a purification flask to push the Skulk back, knowing that it likes to regrow back in the same direction. So I threw down the crying obsidian, waited for the flask to wear off, then waited for everything to get reinfected. The only problem there being that it built far more summoners, which meant far more mobs that I had to deal with, and with 2 nodes, it was getting extremely aggressive. And I'm out of torches, so I'm just lighting the ground on fire to light my way as I'm bowing everything down from a distance. I had succeeded in infecting that block of crying obsidian, but had utterly failed in retrieving it. Oh no. Oh no. That's a lot of mobs. Oh, and it's spawning more and more. Oh my God, what do I even do here? I made one final attempt from the roof of a nearby house, but it was just not looking good. Everything that I was doing was causing far more mobs to be spawned than those I was taking out. And once an Enderman spawned, that was it. I'm sorry, horse and everything else, I am gone. No. The last time I fought one of those, it cost me 3 god apples. There is no way I can fight another. That village is done for. I mean, that village was already done for, but now that village is... I'm never going back there. That obsidian is now also done for. That's gonna spawn another node. There's gonna be 3. There's gonna be 2 right next to each other. Oh, that's so bad. Do I have another saddle? I have I can make a new horse. I can make a new horse. I don't need to save that one. Where do I even go? Wondering where I should set up my new base of operations, I headed over to one of the nearby villages, cooking every bit of cow, pig, or other food with legs that I saw on the way. I eventually settled on looping my way around and working for the easternmost village. It would put me closer towards spawn, towards the grave mine site, and was a straight overland shot toward the area where the previous village had been taken over. I worked on breeding up a few animals just out in the wild, and then started taming my brand new horse, considering my old one had undoubtedly already become skulk food by now. Just as it started to become evening, it also started to rain, and this very well fits in thematically with how much of a midpoint failure this felt like. The world was becoming more skulk. All things shall be part of the grave mind. The following day, I'm thinking fighting an enemy this dangerous requires probably some kind of weapon that's a little bit more powerful. I had a bunch of dungeons weapons in here, so I was investigating how to potentially spawn them in, and it would cost me a lot of iron to potentially get that. While it would be good, I'm not sure it was 100% worthwhile. So instead, I focused on small things, sustainable food sources, stealing anything that wasn't nailed down and was even remotely useful, grabbing hay from the attics and meat from the closets, and don't take that the wrong way. As I was finishing my pillaging of the village, I started seeing messages about the Skulk Horde successfully destroying objectives, which meant that there was a raid at the village I had just abandoned. Knowing that it was done for, I didn't want to engage, but I wanted to do some reconnaissance, see what a raid actually looked like. And the hill was very converted, but you can see the glowing mobs in the distance. This is only wave 6 out of 10. That village is effectively wiped off the map, and everything inside reduced to more skulk. This is my new home now. I slept in my new home before going and mining up a few exposed emerald ore, which is free money. I always like free money. Running up and over the hill and doing a little exploring through the cave systems in the mountain right here. With it being very mountainous, odds are that there was probably another skulk node underneath here, or potentially an ancient city. I found a dungeon relatively quickly, which I lit on fire to stop from spawning. That only worked for a few minutes. Heading down underground to investigate what would be down deep underneath the mountain. And I started by finding a bunch of silverfish, but eventually did find some deep dark. And it was pretty high up, already in the stone layer, which was making me think that this had been generated or grown from something that was a little bit further down. I spent some time using this to try to get myself up to level 30. That hoe was perfect for this, and that would get me up to max level enchants again, and I would be able to potentially enchant and upgrade some of my gear. And somehow, without doing a thing, I was the hero for the village I had left.
Success, I guess?
On the way out, I threw down a single purification flask just to kind of cover my bases, maybe clip off the skulk before it would grow further up. And the following day, we're rebuilding. I made all of the bookcases that I needed, using a few that were already here to get myself back up to max level enchants and starting to enchant on my weapons and armor. First up was an axe, getting Silk Touch, definitely going to come in handy. Now I can move these bookcases without recrafting them. And after making a set of diamond boots and re-rolling a few times, I saw guaranteed protection 4 enchant at level 30. And I have only about 3 levels to go, and I happen to know where I can get a lot of experience. The only problem is, it was growing, and it wanted to turn me into more of it.
Oh my god! That's expanded so much.
I made all of the skulk around the edges, getting myself a little bit over 30 so I could do some additional rerolls, only having to deal with a few waves of mobs that had spawned in. At this point, I had a bit more experience, my armor was better off, so I wasn't panicking as long as Ravager didn't spawn. But it seems like the skulk had kind of reprioritized all of its mass into growth instead of aggression. Potentially the grave mines had gone dormant after a little while, considering the horde took a lot out of them. But they still were wanting to grow, with spore spewers everywhere. And I had a feeling things were going to continue to accelerate. The next morning, I returned back over towards the village and went to re-roll my boots. Losing feather falling sucks, but I need to be spec'd fully into protection to be able to tank all of the damage on all of these monsters. So I even have to re-roll my helmet, getting prot 4 on pending, but I need 30 levels. So let me head back over and... Oh boy.
Oh my god, look at the underground.
It's just solid skulk. But the skulk wasn't the only problem. The seagulls were here too. This time I was a bit more careful, making sure to break the summoners first before harvesting up a whole ton of skulk, but it's still not perfect, and mobs will even spawn passively, or I set up a whole bunch of summoners and just edited it out to make myself look better. But I got myself all the way up to level 30 again, rode my horse back over, took a quick nap there, and then enchanted my helmet for protection 4, immediately getting teased with a feather falling 4 book, meaning that I think you know what I'm doing next. This time I thought, let's go in on the water and harvest some of those lower skulk areas, potentially get some idea on where the note is. Unfortunately, oh, nope. That's a no. So there's an Enderman just chilling in that space. Oh, that's terrifying. So somehow, I think that's there from the end of the raid. It spawns as basically the 10th level boss, and even though the raid failed, it was still there, which is terrifying because that thing can basically one-shot me. But I'm still pressing my luck right here. I need to be properly geared before I can take on the horde in earnest. So harvesting experience, returning back, getting myself a feather falling book, and then spending the next day doing a bit more enchanting, including enchanting a sword, getting fire aspect, which honestly, damage over time seems like a really great opportunity here. I combined the books to get feather falling onto my boots, seeing some additional protection books that I was able to combine even further, but I can't afford to put that on my pants, at least not yet. I threw protection 3 on the chest plate, and now I feel like I'm at least able to take a hit. I don't know if this will even help against the Enderman's Sonic Shriek, or if it's more like the Warden's, but at least it makes me feel safer against the remainder of the mobs. Ravagers especially previously were basically a one-shot kill. I spent the rest of the day just breeding up the mobs around the village. I'm not worried about penning and corralling them in one place because I think that makes them easier skulk food, so I'm just doing some free-range mob collection today. And after dealing with a few villagers who were very concerned with my camping out in the roof of one of their houses, I had to deal with something out front of the house. Why did that raccoon have an axe? It's gonna shank me. This world is weird. So with that taken care of, the main thing I needed to do now was explore the world. I'd mainly been camping out around a few different villages and pushing in and around the areas where skulk infection was pretty bad, but I need to head out and find more ruined nether portals. Not only do they have gold, which I can use for golden apples, but they also have a shot at crying obsidian, which is kind of the main thing I need to prevent this whole infection. The first one I found was guarded by a trident drowned, and as much as I wanted that weapon, I wasn't able to get it. But I continued working my way around in a wide swath of unexplored forest off in the distance. And taking the time to travel on horseback definitely made this feel different than my main hardcore world, where I'd usually just fly with an elytra. And maybe it's because I was boots or hooves on the ground that I actually found something I've never found yet, a trail ruins. Now, I'm going to be honest, this is just a fun little distraction in the middle of the end of the world. You have to find your joys wherever you can, and I'm finding a little bit of joy here, mainly because I want to try to find another armor trim to complete my look here, considering I had spent my only silence trim on my chest plate. I figure if I'm going to be a fighter at the end of the world, fashion game is the end game, and we are definitely in the end game for this reality. So I spent day 60 and 61 just excavating the trail ruins, having a lot of fun with the archaeology minigame, basically, that exists in Minecraft now. And it's funny to think about how things like this used to be modded only, but now it's becoming more and more vanilla. And there's a whole conversation on whether vanilla is quote-unquote too modded nowadays. But I do love how seamless additions like this feel, especially when I've built an entire new reality on top of it with all of the mods that we have installed. I was being super impatient though. Anytime I would start brushing on a block and it didn't immediately look like an armor trim was gonna pop out, I broke it. I also broke a bunch more that I didn't entirely intend to break. And I was about to give up, call it a wash, say that this was just another awful thing at the end of the world, when just like 2 or 3 gravel patches left in the whole structure, I finally nabbed myself an armor trim, so at least now I could look better as I'm running around killing all of the skull cord and saving this world. I dropped all of the pottery shards into a chest here to preserve them for when you get the world download, if you either grab it down below or become a patron, and trimmed out my helmet, going with the amethyst vibe because it feels like that's the main anti-skulk kind of thing. With that done, I jumped back on my horse and continued riding around, making my way all the way back to ground zero, the initial place where the infection had started, and now was pushing back against the skulk a little bit more. I'm doing this mainly to try to punch a hole and push the infection back so that it'll regrow and take over the crying obsidian that I collected from the portal a few days earlier to reinfect that and allow me to make in a few additional purifiers. When it didn't work at spawn, I headed back over towards the mountain to do it, and while the area that I was chopping back didn't exactly convert, I was able to find a spot where it was growing naturally and just kind of put it in its way. With that taken care of, I went to go jump back on my horse, but unfortunately something had gotten to it first. Turns out I had parked just a little bit too close towards the whole will infect any living thing and uses them to spread mob. Well, I had to fight my way through multiple waves of both mites and the cows that they used to breed and skeletons that were trying to use me. I found things like leather and saddles sitting around, but no horse. I think that one died. At a full stack of days, I just hoofed it, walking my way back over to the village, which takes significantly more time when you have to jump up every single individual block. I took out my frustration mainly by killing cows, considering I had a fire aspect sword. It comes out as cooked steak, so this is a lot faster in converting food into food. And I figured let's tame a new horse somewhere around the village so that I could regain that one block jump. Unfortunately, the horses kinda sucked.
Oh, this horse is garbage. Oh, I lost my good horse again.
With my last few pieces of lapis, I was able to get a flame book, which is going to be really essential for upping damage on my bow. And I crafted up the crying obsidian into a pure soul, except now I'm out of a couple really essential resources if I want to keep upgrading. So I dropped off everything, jumped on a new horse, which was less bad, that's the best I can really offer, and headed out to see what was around. I was marking where the infection had grown to at this point, just trying to keep a marker on its current progression and to see if maybe it was accelerating or potentially slowing down. I did accidentally step on a spore spike, which infected the horse and not me, thankfully, using a purification flask to just pop that off. But my main thought is we need to try to find and destroy the next skulk node. I left my ride back in a safe position and scaled over the mountain, making sure to take a wide berth towards that previous entry point I knew existed. And you'll never guess what I found. How are you still alive? Oh my god. How are you still alive? The end of the world is 100 blocks away, and you're just... Be free. You've earned it. I mean, you're gonna die now because of what I just did, but Wait. Wait! This is my first horse! I found my first horse again! Oh! But with a bit of a celebratory mood, I dove down into the aquifers underneath the village, working my way back through towards the place that I had excavated myself out of after the first node had been defeated. I'm back into the mine shaft, which is directly underneath the village, this time with the Skulk Enderman boss bar just haunting me at the top of my screen. If it somehow targets me or blasts me when I'm in this small of a confined space, I'm a goner. So I'm just sitting here, my heart racing, as I'm tracing yet another heartbeat. Thankfully, the confined spaces work on keeping the Ravagers back from me. The Vindicators are probably the biggest threat. But I'm mining my way back and forth, headphones on, just trying to trace the heartbeat through left and right, and thank goodness it was directional. No shot. Now, it seemed like this one was basically fully buried, or it was exposed to a cave that was disconnected from where I was with the mine shafts. It was this one little gap that it had spawned in. I used several blocks of TNT to blast my way through the brain matter, more than I was expecting to use. It cost me almost 7 blocks just to get to the point where I could see the node itself. And then I did not hold back. The problem was the immediate spawning of a new node.
That's just insulting. Literally one spawned as soon as I killed the current one. I'm genuinely so upset. I'm genuinely so upset because we had it. I killed it. I found it was buried. I found it buried, and a new one spawned the second I broke it. And now I don't know where the new one is.
So the tunnel I had used to get to this location was already fully corrupted and converted, and I didn't want to go the way I had come in because I was super nervous about an Enderman or some other mobs just being able to cut me off. As I started mining a new exit point, just heading to the south, I started hearing that heartbeat again, meaning that the next node was honestly relatively close by. The question was where? I marked the potential node location on my map as I made my way into somewhat uninfected caves, meaning that I was kind of at the end of the sphere of influence for this section of the horde. I mined my way up to the surface and ended up basically just barely on the other side of this body of water, but it was gonna keep growing.
I have to go back around again to recover my horse.
So I took a very wide berth as much as I possibly could, ending up in powdered snow and forgetting that that's actually still a threat. Seeing that one block of infested crying obsidian I'd left back here some 30 days prior. It was quite surrounded, but it would be a huge win if I could get it. I slowly crouched, creeping my way through all of the different sensors, just trying to get a little bit closer. My heart pounding, my hands being a little bit scared because that Enderman could appear at any moment. But I was finally able to make my way up close, break the block, summoning basically everything, but legging it out of there as fast as I could.
Calculated risk?
It took a little bit to clear out all the mobs who were hunting me down after, but thankfully my bow is a lot better and now I can fight at range in a more formidable way. But just when I thought I was doing well, an Enderman spawned. Another Enderman spawned, meaning that it could teleport to my location considering I'm fighting the horde right now at any moment. I left, headed south, and started grabbing sand for more purification flasks when I got another notification.
Negative 1084 67 228. Oh, that village is getting raided again. Oh no! Oh, it's gonna kill the horse.
I slept on the beach and resigned myself. I was going to go rescue my companion. I might be that one guy in the horror movie right now, in the zombie movie, who like opens the door to the base to save a dog and then everything pours in. But you know what? I would exactly do that. I would be that guy. I made a really wide sweep along the western edge of the village, staying out of the place where I was seeing notifications, eventually grabbing my horse and heading back, and thankfully the raid was only on wave 2 so far. I did consider fighting back for just a brief while, but then was mainly concerned on fighting mobs and potentially leading them back to my new village.
The thing is, I know wave 10 is the Enderman, and I'll get obliterated. I mean, I could try to save this village, but this village is gone.
So I decided to cut my losses and headed over the hill, once again forgetting about powdered snow. But once I was back at the village, I was sitting there taking notes, accidentally blasting the skull corn in the middle of town, and divvied up all of the sand, taking half of it for TNT, which I would need later, and smelting up the rest to get more glass to get more bottles. Now, if I wanted more TNT to take on another node, I'm gonna need more gunpowder. To get more gunpowder, I need to kill normal, uninfected creepers. But there was a problem.
So the problem I think that I have is the entire mob cap is probably filled with skulk mobs. So nothing's spawning anywhere.
Oh, no. I genuinely think that might be it. Yep, wave 6. I think the mob cap's full. I literally ran around the whole night and didn't see a single uninfected mob anywhere around this village. So it makes me think I really stepped in it. And yeah, I'm kind of in an unprogressible state. I was able to make a few more purification flasks, which is definitely going to come in handy. And the next day, while just riding around figuring let's go get some more lapis so that I can enchant my gear, I was seeing that Skulk raid bar very south from the village that it was supposedly targeting, which kind of gave me pause because I was practically at home at that point. I found a spot where the caves were heading down and instead dropped off the horse to go mining and ignored the whole raid problem, progressing my way all the way down to the deep slate and then almost immediately finding more Skulk. So I think this is a dormant bit of Skulk, or at least not part of the horde. It could be a whole new thing if I happen to cause another node to spawn, so this could be risky. This is a new one. I was just going for lapis. I mean, that being at the top scares me, but okay, hold up. Okay. But I'm mining up all of the wool, breaking the shriekers so I don't have to deal with a warden, and it's a somewhat more vanilla ancient city experience. Considering everything else that we've been dealing with to this point, feels like an absolute win. I got jump scared by the Skulk Horde failing to destroy that village again, and I have no idea how because it is basically defenseless. Task failed successfully again. I didn't do anything. Good to know. Okay. I'm thinking it might be the fact that it's kind of those better villages that have more what the Horde consider priority targets that are in weird positions and aren't able to be easily destroyed. I was able to find some more armor trims down here in the deep dark, including some mending pants, which just might come in handy, name tags for my horse, which I will inevitably lose, some music discs, some additional amethysts and bits and bobs. I did spawn a warden at one point in time, but honestly that feels way less dangerous compared to what I've been dealing with on a daily basis. But just as the thunder was crashing and the world was feeling ominous, I was about to catch a very lucky break. Huge. Absolutely huge. That infinity book is game changing. It means I no longer have to worry about running out of arrows in the middle of the fight. And on day 60 nice, I continued looting around, seeing what else I could find from this ancient city before it would turn into something that definitely wanted to eat me. I did eventually get to a chest that there was no possible way for me of blocking it off from the sensors. I've been running from Endermen and Ravagers, a blind warden who could only smell me. I mean, I've been nervous for a lot of this 100 days, but I normally do shower and everything, so there is that. But I kind of just ran in a panic and let all stealth out of the window. I don't know if setting off the vanilla shriekers also alerts the horde. That would be horrifying if that's the case. But something tells me we were testing that hypothesis in this moment. Found a bunch of decent enchanted books, a lot of echo shards, things that could potentially be useful. But I did kind of just end up running in a circle for a while. I wasn't making any major progress. So that was one major thing that I was looking for. Like, the Infinity book is great, don't get me wrong, but a God Apple would allow me to survive in a fight versus a Skulk Enderman. At least, maybe. It had taken me 3 the first time I had tangled with one, but then again, now I was in full protection diamond armor, so maybe there was a shot. I had a chance. But instead, I left. God Apple-less, but a little bit better equipped. I did eventually find a few vanilla mobs here, which was promising. It made me think that maybe there was some space in the mob cap, and I actually came out of the caves on the more northern end underneath the cherry grove, so I could see my old village in the distance as the sun started to rise. I made my way south as the sun started to crest the hill, grabbing my horse, running back over to the village, and finally enchanting my bow with infinity. So worth it. That is a problem solver now. We just need to make sure it doesn't break. Now we can just do this. Like, look at the amount of inventory space we clear up. And that wasn't all I was upgrading. I found some respiration books, so my helmet would be a little bit better. I had more armor trims that I could duplicate, so I could at least fight the apocalypse in fashion, and fashion game is the end game. But I did a bit more organizing of my inventory with smelting up all of the raw ores, especially the gold, so I could make more golden apples for more purification flasks. I got sweeping edge on my sword. I don't know if that's gonna work. I don't really use sweeping edge too much. And spent time breeding animals before heading far south, as far away as I possibly could, eventually seeing vanilla mobs. And this is so promising. I was able to, throughout the night, I mean, I was mainly dealing with skeletons, but I was able to, throughout the night, find quite a few creepers and get them killed as well, meaning I had gunpowder, meaning I had a chance at fighting the next node. The next morning, I crafted up all 5 pieces of TNT. Thank goodness for this extended recipe, or else I would have gotten nothing. And I jumped on my horse to go check on the progress of the infection. The thing I'm worried about right now is if the 2 main growth areas of Skulk intersect, would that do something weird with the mass, or would it kind of reactivate everything that feels somewhat dormant on the mountain? I say dormant, look at how far it's grown, but at least there's not a node there, so it's not spawning things as aggressively. I looped my way back around to the village just to get an idea of what was going on around here. But when I went to go grab those hay bales, I was blasted by the Skulk Enderman, which caused me to panic and just run. Golden apples, and then figure out what I was gonna have to do. I didn't want to lose my horse. It was my OG horse. So I thought, let me head back around, see if I can go and get them out of there before anything goes badly. The problem is, by the time I had made my way back around and recovered, there was just a pile of goop where my horse formerly was. Oh, it absolutely killed the horse. With those mobs, it's dead. It's dead. I took a quick nap waiting for the next day, where I fought my way over, dealing with quite a few mobs respawning, and found out that my horse's death seemed to be the catalyst for a massive portion of growth on this side of the village. I basically had just barely pushed it over where we're starting to grow. There was an insane amount of mobs over here already, and multiple hives, and the Enderman was just chilling on the hill, just barely there to blast me, and I was angry. I used more purification flasks and then just started mining down, again trying to track to that heartbeat sound effect, getting to a cave where as I moved along, I would get an idea on the axis of where it could potentially be. Peeking around the corners, which I got a lot better at since my one chunk video, go watch that. That one was a lot of fun. At one point in time, I followed down a cave through a little bit of water, seeing some more brain blocks off in the distance. And lucky me, this was where I needed to go. With one node down and an immediate respawn if... Oh, it's a shovel. Okay. Makes sense. Scoop the brains out. No. And it's close because I can hear it again. It's over that way now. If nothing else, I'm really kind of containing the horde. I say containing, look how much ground it's covered, but at least it feels like I'm doing something. I'm fighting my way through several of the caves, dealing with a few summoners that I had to be very careful about. The Ravagers are extremely lethal here in close quarters. But I found quite a few hives and other things here underground. Destroying them would allow me to just, if nothing else, slow the growth. And finding a bunch of living rock spires around here meant I found a whole bunch of calcite. And if I can get even more crying obsidian for more purified souls, that means I can make a whole bunch of purifiers and really start fighting back against the infection instead of my little kind of Clorox bottles that I'm currently using. Working my way through that cave, I did see more brain blocks off in the distance, and I was able to find my way in towards the next node pretty quickly, the fastest I've ever done this. 1 TNT later. Done.
Heck yes. I think that might have said a new one spawned already, though.
Now, I didn't know this at the time because they happened so rapidly, but you can actually see how quickly it spawned another one. And that just goes to show how much mass I've allowed the horde to accumulate at this point. They can do it that rapidly. Now, in all fairness, also, I had these settings pretty aggressive in the mod. Shout out to the author, actually, who allowed me to configure it to make this version of the horde this aggressive. You'll be able to play that in my version of the mod pack, but go check out theirs for something that is at least a little bit more fair and balanced. But eventually I made my way out of all of the infected caves back into solid, normal, uninfested stone, digging my way up and throwing down some torches, ending up pretty south and a little bit east, basically splitting the distance between the new grave mine sites and the original one on the first mountain that I had encountered it in. After putting down a big X to mark it, forgetting that I had waystones for some reason, I slept in the field and thought we need to do something before the skulk really crosses this river right here, or else it's going to start making its way down to my new village pretty rapidly. First thing, I was using purification flasks to just try to push everything back, then using my hoe to mine up a ton of these skulk blocks themselves, spawning in some mobs, not being too overly worried about it and feeling a little bit more aggressive. I mean, I had just killed its brain twice in a row recently, so fighting things like a skeleton or a single ravager, that didn't seem too bad. The Vindicators are actually one of the biggest threats because they move at a pretty rapid pace. They're only 1 or 2 hits with a fire aspect sharpness sword, so it's mainly about not being hit. I made my way back to my village, smelting up a ton of the gold that I had collected while I was down in the mines trying to kill the 2 nodes, grabbing a few apples from the market area and accidentally smacking one of the villagers.
Whoops. Didn't mean to, I'm sorry.
Honestly, I'm trying to save the world, so they should be totally okay with that. Day 76, I headed back up towards the Skulk beachhead on the southern shore. I'm trying to push it backwards. A lot of the damage that I had already done had regrown, which makes me think that the newest node is potentially a little bit further south than all of the others, and I'm gonna have to do something really fast if I don't want this area completely encapsulated. So I built a few towers and put one of the purifiers on top of each. Now the purifiers are interesting. They're like a hyped up version of the flask and will constantly push back the infection whenever they're active. However, the horde is aggressive towards them, and if they do too much damage, they'll destroy it forever. So you need to make sure that you're protecting them. Having them up on towers like this meant that they really couldn't be attacked by anything underneath. The only real danger was maybe skeletons attacking from the high ground, but me operating right here with a bow at my side meant that I could counter range with range relatively easily. Plus, there's the added benefit of they set all skulk mobs on fire, which means I'm doing significant damage to them too. That continued into the next morning, where the southern shore was starting to look a little bit more normal. I still had to do things like break hives manually, clean up the odd few blocks of skulk infestation here and there, but realistically, I had successfully done it. I had pushed the horde back across this river, and it might feel like a very small victory, only 100 blocks or so, but it was one of the first times that I had gained ground against it, and I felt like pushing. I crossed the river, working my way in, seeing another hive where I could get even more resin, and then being chased into one of the caves, finding some stone brick just at the back of the tunnel here. So yeah, those dungeons right there were actually a mod that I had put into this pack when I was building an entirely separate one. It has nothing to do with the Skulk Horde, but you know what? I'm not going to say no to a big sword in this kind of situation.
Wait. Oh my god, I found a totem!
Dancer's sword.
Oh, I found like a legendary artifact.
And while it felt good to have pushed the infection back across the river, hold the line, the real question would be, would it stick? Would it work? Or would it just immediately reinfect the second I backed off from this area and I needed to leave those purifiers there 24/7 if they were going to do anything? As I headed off to just do the final bit of cleanup here, another Skulk Enderman had spawned, and I was nervous it would be where I had just been fighting everything. So the next morning after waking up, I turned around to see that I was confronted with a few dudes with crossbows. I used their absolutely abysmal trigger discipline to deal with most of that situation, killing off the stragglers and then focusing my attention back on the Skulk. The fact that we had gained ground and it hadn't been reinfected yet made me think I could push a little bit further. So I worked my way around on the left side of the shore where the river actually ended, and I was getting gutsier just putting the purifiers down on the ground instead of worrying about building them up on towers. Mainly because if the mobs are there, they're focusing on me because I'm what's killing them, even though the purifier is what's actually killing them. I spent a good chunk of the remainder of this day just fighting mobs for the whole day, basically. I put myself way up over level 30, and the next morning, you wouldn't know that all of this was Skulk. It all just looked like dirt and grass again. The problem I had was all of a sudden I was getting messages about the Skulk Horde having successfully destroyed objectives, even though I didn't know that another raid had started, which made me nervous and had me run back to the village thinking maybe something was there. Oh my god. I didn't even notice. That's massive. I was so busy fighting over here, it just expanded this way instead.
Oh no.
What do I even do with that? Okay, real quick. Can I make another purifier? So it turns out I was able